Welcome back. Today we're going to dive into a story that really pushes back against our modern obsession with getting the most bang for our buck. It's a story about an act of devotion so wild, so inefficient, that to pretty much everyone watching, it just looked like a total and complete waste.
I mean, think about the words that run our world, right? Cost effectiveness, efficiency, ROI, life hacking. In our jobs, our finances, even our personal lives, we're all looking for that hack, that shortcut, the highest possible return on any investment of our time or our money. It's always about maximum output for minimum input.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at this modern obsession of ours. Then, we'll jump into this ancient story about so-called waste. From there, we'll explore two totally different ways of seeing the same event, get into a kind of love that doesn't do math, and finally, we'll ask the big question: what does it mean for us to break our own jars?
At its heart, this constant drive for efficiency, it's really a kind of maximized, self-centered thinking. We are always running the numbers, always calculating profit and loss. And this way of thinking, it doesn't just stay at the office. No, it bleeds into every corner of our lives, even into our spirituality.
And this is where the trap is. It's so subtle. We start to expect the biggest blessings from God for, the smallest personal commitment, the biggest answers for the smallest prayers. All of a sudden, faith isn't a relationship anymore, it's a transaction. It's a spiritual cost-benefit analysis.
But then you get this story in Mark chapter 14, and it just flips that whole way of thinking on its head. It actually celebrates an act that, by any of our modern standards, would be seen as an absolutely shocking and irresponsible waste.
And you have to see how the story is structured. Mark sets it up like a sandwich. On the outside, you've got these two pieces of dark bread, the religious leaders plotting to kill Jesus, and then his own disciple Judas planning the betrayal. But right there in the middle, shining against all that darkness, is this one incredible, beautiful act of love.
So, an unnamed woman walks into the room. She's holding this beautiful alabaster jar of perfume, and then she does the unthinkable. She breaks it and pours the entire jar of perfume over Jesus' head. The value? A staggering 300 denarii.
Now let's just pause and put that in perspective. 300 denarii was what a common laborer would earn in an entire year of work. I want you to imagine your whole salary for the last 12 months. Everything you worked for. Gone. Poured out in a single, irreversible moment. That is the scale of what she gave.
So, what was the reaction? Well, the disciples were furious. They immediately did the math. With 300 denarii, you could feed over 7,500 people. So, do you anoint one person, or do you feed a whole town? To them, the choice was a no-brainer. What she did was just an outrageous, illogical waste of resources.
And the word they used to describe her act was apolia. Now, this isn't just waste, like leaving the lights on. It means total destruction, a ruinous loss that has absolutely no purpose. They looked at what she did and they saw something that was completely and utterly pointless.
And this, right here, sets up the central conflict of the story. It's the world's logic crashing head-on with a completely different kind of logic. It's a clash between doing the quote-unquote right work and doing a good work.
Just as everyone is scolding her, Jesus steps in and he totally reframes the whole situation. He defends her. He says, "Leave her alone. She has done a good work to me." He doesn't just say, "Oh, her heart was in the right place." No, he says the act itself was good.
And the specific phrase Jesus uses is so important, kalon ergon. This is different from the normal word for good. Kalon means something that isn't just morally right, but it's also beautiful, it's noble, it's fitting, and it was perfectly, absolutely appropriate for that specific moment.
So let's compare these two worldviews. You've got the disciples pushing for the right work. Their criteria? Efficiency and economics. Their logic was simple. Sell this, help the poor. But Jesus saw a good work. His criteria? Beauty, love, and perfect timing. His logic was, this is a beautiful act of devotion that's preparing me for my burial. One way of seeing is all about calculation. The other is all about adoration. Okay, this brings us to an even deeper and frankly more dangerous part of this story, the spiritual trap of a calculated faith. It's a kind of faith that always sounds right, but it might actually be completely wrong.
I mean, the disciples' argument was really powerful because it sounds so logical, so moral. Number one, helping the poor is a good thing, right? Yes. Number 2, 300 denarii is a ton of money. Yes. Number 3, the greatest good for the greatest number. That's a compelling principle. Seriously, who could argue with any of that?
But then, the Gospel of John pulls back the curtain on the guy leading the criticism, Judas Iscariot, and it reveals this really dark motive. His right words were just a cover for a greedy heart. See, he wasn't actually upset about the poor. He was upset that he'd lost a chance to skim off the top. It's a chilling reminder that just because you say the right words doesn't mean you have the right heart. But it wasn't just Judas. Even for the other disciples, who weren't thieves, their calculation revealed something really troubling. By putting a price tag on that perfume and suggesting better ways to use the money, what they were really saying, without even realizing it, was that Jesus himself wasn't worth such an extravagant gift. They put a limit on his value. And that right there is the heart of it all. A calculated faith is a cold faith. Just think about it, right? A parent doesn't calculate the cost of raising their child. Someone who's deeply in love doesn't count the hours they spend together. Real love, true devotion, it operates on a totally different economy. One where this kind of extravagant waste is actually the highest expression of value. So what in the world does this mean for us today? That's what we're going to get into in our final section, trying to understand the economics of heaven and what it looks like to break our own alabaster jars.
So Jesus called her act a beautiful work, and he gives 3 key reasons why. First, it was purely for him. She wasn't doing it for show or to get praise from anyone else. Second, it was perfectly timed. And third, without even knowing it, she was preparing him for his burial, anointing him like a king for his final and greatest act.
That timing piece is so crucial. Jesus points out the difference between 2 concepts of time. There's chronos, that's just ordinary clock time, one day after another. He says you'll always have opportunities to help the poor in chronos time. But then there's kairos, and kairos is a unique, decisive moment of opportunity. His physical presence with them was a kairos moment, a window of opportunity that she seized and everyone else completely missed. And finally, you have to look at the verb the Bible uses. It says she didn't just open the jar. The Greek word is synthripsasa. She shattered it completely. This was an irreversible, all-in, no-turning-back act of devotion. By breaking the jar, she made sure it could never be used for anything or anyone else. She held nothing back. And so, this whole story leaves us with a pretty challenging question, doesn't it? What is the alabaster jar in our own lives? What is that one precious thing, our time, our money, our pride, our 5-year plan, that we hold on to so tightly? This story asks us to think about what it would mean to stop calculating and instead to shatter it in an act of beautiful, holy waste for the one thing that matters most to us.